Hello, everyone. Welcome. I hope your school year is off to a great start. I'll allow a couple seconds for everyone to get settled. You'll just notice that when you come into the call, you're automatically muted, but this is very much going to be an interactive call. So feel free to unmute yourself, use the chat, ask questions, answer questions, give your advice and tips. This is very much a safe space for Montessori school leaders just to come together and talk about school leadership. So if you're joining us for the first time, I'm Camilla Campuzano. I'm the Community and School Growth Manager here at Nido Marketing. We also have Elizabeth here on the call. She's our Executive Director. So she's here as well, just listening in and is happy to answer any questions that might be more relevant to her. Um, but it's great to be back for another school year of Montessori Town Halls. I see some familiar faces, some familiar names, and I see a couple of newbies. So if you're here for the first time, welcome again. These town halls are going to be hosted every Thursday, pretty much until the end of May, so throughout the school year. And they're always free to join, so feel free to share the information with your fellow Montessori administrators. We also record these calls, so they are always available on our YouTube channel if you ever need to refer to them or you wanted to see what we were discussing or reference a note that we talked about. You can always look them up on our YouTube channel. They're publicly posted there. All right, today's town hall is going to be all about just setting yourself up for success for the new school year ahead. Again, this is very much going to be an interactive call, so at some points I'll ask you all to share your goals or to share things and takeaways from last year, things that you maybe want to implement again that worked really well last year, things that you want to try out, and things that you noticed didn't work so well and that you might want to change. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So new school year, new leadership and enrollment goals. Here's just a little brief overview about what we're going to be talking about. We're going to start off talking a little bit about knowing your audience because I feel that every year in any space, I think our target audience changes a little bit. Parents bring their new generational values, their new expectations. We have a lot of learning to do when it comes to meeting their needs. And it's important to set expectations as a school so that you can really set up a great school and parent partnership. We'll talk as well about setting admissions goals. I know that admissions isn't always everyone's favorite thing to talk about. It's kind of a necessary evil of being a Montessorian because you need to have full programs if you want to run a successful school. So we'll talk a little bit about best practices. This will be a great opportunity for you all to share what has worked in your community. Your ideas can be helpful to others on this call. We'll talk a little bit about developing a marketing plan, but I think we're going to do it in a way that brings new ideas for this year and just kind of rehashing best practices. We'll talk as well about focusing on community. I think that this really started becoming a main focus kind of post-COVID, where people really kind of noticed the value of community. And I think it's very important as a school to invest time in your community and also to find a community for yourself as a school leader. We'll also talk about measuring success. I think the start of a school year is usually a great time to start collecting data, start collecting feedback, start keeping track of things so that when the school year wraps up, you have a lot to reflect on. You can really see at a glance what worked well and what didn't. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A and discussion at the end as well. All right, so I'd love for everyone to just give a little brief introduction of themselves. Feel free to share it in the chat. You don't have to mute yourself if you don't want to. I know some of you are at school and might have busy things going on in the background, so no worries. But just to get an idea of where you're joining us from and what you do at your Montessori school. Hi, Wally. It's great to see you back from Crabapple Montessori School. Wally's one of our regulars who's been joining our town halls for years, so we're happy to see you again. Hopefully your school year is off to a good start.
Hopefully I'll get a prize one of these days for being attending regularly.
I do think you win the award for most attended town halls. Diane here from St. Peter's Montessori in Arizona, head of school. Great. Chelsea joining us, marketing and communications at South Coast Montessori School in Santa Barbara, California. Great. So a couple of West Coast people. It's great. All right. I'll continue to keep an eye on the chat here. Lori Thurston, it's good to see you again, joining us from Georgia, Meadowbrook Montessori. All right, wonderful. And Brittany here from Katy, Texas. My Montessori was also in Texas. I was in Northwood, so not too far off. We were in the suburb of Houston. That's great. Awesome. So we've got schools from all over the country. All right. So first we'll talk about kind of just why it's important for us to focus so much on enrollment and admissions. I think especially if you're an administrator, whether you're in your marketing team, this is probably something that's always constantly on your head is how are we filling our spots? I think everyone's goal is kind of to have a wait list, having, those spots filled. That's ideally where you want to be. It helps with financial stability of the school. I know in the Montessori space, the majority of schools are usually private, meaning that, your funds come from parents who pay tuition. There are a couple of charter schools or public Montessori schools, but they're fewer and far between. It also really ensures the quality of your education. It allows you to have a more diverse learning community. It allows you to also have expanded educational offerings. I know many schools who started off as a primary only, and then they were able to grow to lower elementary or to toddler because they were able to do well. So it's something that, if you have a good admissions process, you have high enrollment, you can definitely achieve. Of course, the long-term viability, community engagement, and advocacy and influence. And kind of in that order is what I like to, is what I like to say. You start off with the financial stability. We've met many Montessori schools since Nido Marketing has started, and there are some that we meet that are very early on in the process, and they just are looking for that financial stability so that they can break even, they can run a program, they can pay their staff, and they're not at a profit. Um, and then later on, we have schools that have been able to achieve so much. They've been open for decades, and they're at the point in their community where they're all about advocacy and influence, and they are really a pillar of their community. So I think all of that's achievable for every school. So the first step I always like to kind of ask schools when it comes to their marketing journey, when it comes to just trying to grow in their community is what makes your school unique and what's your school's identity. I really recommend taking a look at your mission statement at the start of every year. I think this is something you should bring up early on in staff meetings, especially at the beginning of the year, and kind of have just a discussion about the vision and goals year upon year. Maybe a mission statement is something that you can edit over time, but really it's the core of who your school is. I think it's really important to create a strong mission and make it a little bit unique to your school community. What differentiates you from other Montessori schools? Do you have, a very culturally diverse program that you're proud of? Do you offer a lot of involvement with nature or the wider community? This is something that you should absolutely include in your mission statement or your vision statement. I think identifying all of your unique selling points is what's at the core of all of your communications during your enrollment process. And I think that this works a lot better in the Montessori space because we're not salesy people. We don't use that language in our space. It's not, pushy. We don't come across that way. I think we're very much a passion-led space and a mission-led space. So when you have a well-developed mission statement, I think it just trickles down into every element of your marketing, your admissions, and your enrollment. And it also just helps with retention in the long term if people are really aligned with that mission. Target audience analysis. This is also something I recommend that school leaders, marketing teams in schools, admissions team in schools really consider, and I think it changes year upon year. Usually it's kind of the same, but kind of different. So we know that we're looking at parents that are in our local area. They have certain values, but I think that, every generation does bring different challenges, or maybe not challenges, but opportunities. Um, so I think that, once you've established what your differentiating feature is as a school, you can really start envisioning that ideal Montessori and mission appropriate family. We call it in marketing creating an avatar for your business. Um, and I think this is where you can really ask yourself the basics as well, demographic. Usually the demographic doesn't change very much. You're looking at parents around the same age in your local area, maybe have around a certain income. Those are the basics. But then I think the psychographics is what really changes a little bit more year upon year. So that's always interesting to take a look at. This is also a great opportunity to conduct surveys. I know last year at one of our town halls, we had a conversation about conducting surveys and what kind of surveys are helpful to conduct year upon year to gather this data. So hopefully you have a couple of, testimonials or feedbacks, or you conducted a couple surveys that have given you insights for the coming year. But this is something I recommend reviewing or collecting throughout the school year. So do you like our communication methods? Maybe your school is using something like Brightwheel or Curacubby, some type of software like that to communicate with families. Make sure you get feedback on that. When parents, enroll at your school, ask them questions or send them a survey about how was the admissions process? What can we improve on? Did you enjoy the tour? Did you feel like you got all your questions answered? Did you find everything approachable? So these are the things that you can kind of do to give you a better idea of the psychographics of your target audience. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? Are they feeling intimidated by, everything you're sharing? Is it too much learning on the tour? Is it too much? Is it too overwhelming? Or are you great? You're answering the questions in an approachable way. You're offering resources. So it's great to get that feedback. And also just to constantly be analyzing your current parent community. Check in with your teachers because usually they're really good at just observing naturally as Montessorians. They can see not only the child's behavior, but how parents are feeling usually. Is there a parent that's giving them a problem? How can that be improved? What can the school do to support the staff and the parent? So these are all the things that you can kind of set up as a goal for the ongoing school year. Which brings me again to our setting your goals. So I'd love to pause here a little bit and just discuss what we've covered so far. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What goals are you setting for yourself this school year, based off of your experience last year? Or maybe this is your first year as a Montessori administrator or leader, and you're just, here to observe and see what works for the first year. And I'd just love to hear what others have to say.
Camila, the general goals, aren't they pretty much same for most schools, or do they vary, I think, quite a bit from school to school?
From what I've been seeing in the community, there are some similarities. I think, increasing enrollment is almost always a goal for many schools. And I also think something I'm seeing a lot is staffing and staff retention. Is just an ongoing thing that schools are trying to improve. Now, this is just my observation based off of being in community groups. But I'm not sure if that's what we all are feeling on this call, or if we have similar or different challenges here.
I mean, our goals have been pretty much the same every year. I mean, one thing is obviously to have uh, a good enrollment is number one.
Mhm.
Good quality of education to for the children, retention of staff, and building a good and solid parent community.
I
These
think
have
those are
been
all
the main 3 or 4 goals that we have strived for every year consistently.
great. And I love that you brought up the parent community as well. I think that's something that differentiates Montessori schools from other schools or daycares, is the sense of parent support that we offer.
And that's a big challenge, I think, for not just us, but many of the schools in an environment where parents are so busy, especially two working families, to try to maybe get them to spend more time on certain events and all that. That's becoming more and more difficult with time.
Absolutely. Is anyone else feeling that way, that with parents being very busy, it's hard to get them to come to events or to be involved in school life? I feel like the consensus is usually yes with most. Um, Lori says here, we're working on strengthening our parent community as well. And yes, and Brittany also agrees that yes, it is a challenge. And I think that this is something that we discussed at past town halls, is just getting parents involved in school is a challenge, but it's something that um you kind of have to set somewhat realistic goals. And unfortunately, I feel like every year it kind of your goals with that kind of have to be brought down to earth a little bit more, because parents, I think, are so overwhelmed um with work. And I don't know if they always prioritize school, and we need to really highlight that it is so important and that it is a partnership. So I think setting that up early is hugely valuable. Something that has worked for some communities is when parents enroll in a school. Part of the enrollment process, they have a parent agreement form or a school involvement contract of some sort that parents have to sign. Um, where it basically outlines the expectations of the school parent partnership. Like, let's say you're hosting maybe 3 parenting events throughout each year, a parent has to at least come to one. And they have to sign that they're able to come to that one. Um, so something like that can sometimes help a little bit, or just have it typed out. But there's always going to be that 1 or 2 parents who probably need it the most, who are going to find a way out of it. But I think it does help with overall in the community. Something like that is kind of a solution that's worked for some people. Um,
I'm Lisa Edmondson from Daycraft School in Ann Arbor, and what we found is post-pandemic, our families couldn't wait to commune again. We're a 200 student school, toddler through 6th grade in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so we implemented a few things that we found have been really successful. We have a parent guild, and they plan different social events throughout the school year. That we had a meeting last night, a lot of new families. So we try to engage, especially the younger families who want to be here for a while. We also, the last 3 years, have implemented parent nights out. So the first Thursday of every month, my head of school and I host a parent night out from 7 to 9 p.m. It's at a local venue. We did pickleball twice last year. We did different local breweries or places like that, just a place to come and meet other families. We also started a parent ambassador program 3 years ago, where we ask specific parents, 2 parents from each in each classroom, 1 first year and 1 a second year, or an elder parent. And they plan social events outside of school for the class, just to bring school community together. And with these things, our families have felt very connected and very networked and very part of our community.
that's amazing, Lisa. Thank you for sharing. And I think 100% people are craving that connection. And I like that there's a social element there, and it's not necessarily always Montessori focused, because sometimes it can feel like you're asking rather than giving when you offer activities, or you meet at a local brewery, or you're offering some type of activity for the children. I think that gives instead of takes. And so parents are connecting together, they're talking, they're building friendships. And when that happens, they're much more willing, I think, to come to school events later on, or just be more aligned with the overall mission of the school. So I think all of that's great.
A
Anybody have
question
any?
for Lisa.
Sure.
Lisa, what has been your attendance of the parents for the nights out that you have organized?
So it depends on each one. In the fall, we get most, like for our parent nights out, we get the highest attendance, and nothing's mandatory. And usually the winter, nobody wants to come out in the snow. So it just depends, and we plan for whatever it is. And You know, like with pickleball, we just pick up the expense of that just because we want parents to be there also. So it just depends on the event. And what we find also is when they have the social time, then when it's time for a spring benefit or annual giving, they're also even more open to do that because they know the community that they're supporting here at Daycraft.
Absolutely.
Do you have childcare for that as well?
For the parent nights out, they just get a sitter. They get sitters. Yep. Or sometimes one parent will come and one parent won't come, and then they'll switch the next month. So it just depends.
Rachel here in the chat adds, we also host a similar parent social night twice a year. The teachers provide free healthcare so parents can mingle and we cater dinner. It's a well-attended event. It's another approach for that. All great. Now we're gonna dive into a more kind of a technical element of, you know, the enrollment and admissions process for the upcoming school year and just setting short-term enrollment goals. We get a lot of people that, you know, they come to us and they say, oh, I want to fill a whole classroom, or I need to fill this amount of spots before we open our doors. And usually a lot of those can be achievable if, you know, you're really willing to do the work, to put yourself out there in the community. But these are factors that we always tell schools that they should really be considering when it comes to, you know, looking at a short-term enrollment goal. I think local demand is number one. So just seeing how many families are in your local area, what is the local demand for childcare, what are the prices, what are your competitors offering, what is the value that other schools are offering, what are your own marketing budgets and efforts. And you don't necessarily have to spend a lot to get a lot in the Montessori space, because I think that we are a passion-led base. So I think if you have a great mission, you have great communicators on your team, and you're able to lead great tours, you're able to get people through the door. I think a mix of old-fashioned marketing and new style marketing, like digital marketing, can work. And of course, your school size and capacity. I think what are your minimum spots filled to run your program? Do you need to merge classrooms together? Things like that are things to consider. I think it's important to be measuring your process through data, such as tracking your leads, looking at your ad performance. If you're running digital ads, you should definitely be doing that or have someone who can do that for you. Taking a look at conversions. I'm not sure if this is available on every website builder software. I'm not sure if it's available on Squarespace or if you use GoDaddy. But I think it's important to take a look at behavior on your website. Are people spending a lot of time on your website? What are they clicking on? Are they filling out forms often? These are areas that you can tweak for free if you already pay for your website. So I think it's important to make sure that those things are working well. And always keep a look at tour scheduled. I think this is usually the best way to know that you have a very interested parent, is when they have that tour schedule. How many conversions are you getting a month? How many tours scheduled are you getting a month? What are your busiest times of the year? That way you can anticipate, you can do extra promotion, extra marketing in the lead up to that. So just things to consider. Now, when it comes to looking at a longer term for enrollment goals, this is more in a 3 to 5 year plan. Something that you might want to consider is, do you want to expand your school? Many schools come to us and say, ideally, we would like to, you know, have a great primary program. Once we have children that start to age out of it, we want to open a lower elementary. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. How can I nurture parents for the long run? We just discussed a lot of great community building ideas. This is thinking long term. I think a lot of people think enrollment stops once a new parent becomes a current parent, but it continues. The admissions process continues into a retention process. And if you're offering multiple programs, you're constantly doing internal marketing to keep families on board. Part of that is building community. Part of that is offering value that they're not going to necessarily get from a public school or from a different community. So this is something that I would count as part of your overall enrollment plan. Staffing is another one. I think this is a challenge for for many schools, especially if you're accredited and it's a requirement for you to have accredited guides. I think this varies depending on your accreditation, but it's a very big challenge to find and keep staff. So I think implementing goals for that as well is important. Now, we've had several conversations on staffing at our town halls, and we will have more this year because it's a reoccurring topic. And we're always trying to find strategies for schools to recruit and retain staff. And I think also program development is always important. How can we be adapting with the times in a way that is still true to the Montessori philosophy? And that can be a challenge, especially I think for those of you who have programs that are maybe middle school programs or adolescent programs. I think that could be a challenge because competing with public schools that are integrating a lot of technology, it sometimes is not always the most aligned with Montessori. So finding a healthy medium there. I see here in the chat a question here from Lisa. What software programs are you using to monitor your funnels? This is a great question. If anyone has any advice, any tips. I know we have a couple people here who use our CRM, our Montessori CRM for admissions funnels. Does anyone else here use any software? Or do you track the old-fashioned way? Just on a spreadsheet or paper? Hopefully not.
And to my point, I guess, is, when my head of school wants a board report, right? So we use RenWeb, Fax SIS, but then to integrate the phone calls and things like that, like it seems like it's everywhere and then it's repetitive. So I'm just trying to figure out how to streamline and then put that and create a report for my head for, board meetings.
Right. No, that makes complete sense. Well, here in the chat, we have a couple people who use our CRM, but I will say, and here, this is what Rachel says. I use a mix of the Nido CRM and my own school tracking on Excel sheets. We're a small school, not sure we could old school it as much as a larger school. What I will say is a couple of schools that we work with, they also use for things like the phone numbers and all of that for their current parents. And for retention purposes, I think using things like Brightwheel or Kirikubby are great. They work well in Montessori, but then for an admissions funnel, a CRM I think is great because a CRM will pull those reports for you. So you can see, how many contacts you're getting through your website a year, where they're coming from, what forms they're filling out, how many tours scheduled. You can break that information down and present it to a board because I know you have to present those numbers and make sure that everything looks good. So something like that. Now there are other CRMs out there, but ours is very much geared towards Montessori. But yeah, I would say it's for admissions purposes. So once you have someone enrolled and you want to have software to track, everything else, maybe Brightwheel, Transparent Classroom as well is another one that I think that schools use for communication and things like that. So it's always a mix, a mix of different softwares that have worked. We had a conversation about this on our forum on Montessori Thrive earlier this week, and a lot of people were recommending the most recommended kind of management one was Brightwheel, and then if you're looking for a funnel for admissions purely, I would recommend our CRM, but there's a couple of options out there. All right. Now we talked about this a little bit, so I'll go ahead and skip this. All right, so developing a marketing plan. I think developing a marketing plan is an ongoing thing that happens. You definitely reflect on it most, I think, at the start of a school year and at the end of a school year, but it's something that is requires a lot of nurturing, a lot of looking after, a lot of refinement, and it changes year upon year. This is why I think working in a marketing space is so interesting, because our target audiences are changing over time. I do recommend having a couple of different strategies and approaches when it comes to marketing, and some of them are going to be free. We talk a lot about the use of free marketing. Social media is free marketing. Technically creating content and writing blogs, if you do it yourself, that's something that doesn't cost money. It just takes a little bit of time. Things like that can be a way to market your school at a lower cost. And then, of course, there is paid marketing, like running Google ads and things like that that are also effective. But you can always use one or the other or a mix of both. The number one thing I always tell schools to revise, especially at the start of a school year, but I think throughout the year, is their website. Your website nowadays is the most important tool when it comes to your admissions process. I think this is something you should always be testing. You should always be looking at how people are behaving on your website. Do you have clear calls to action? Do you have forms on your website? Are your images blurry? Do they look outdated? It's time for a refresh. This is how parents are building an impression of your school. So you want to make sure that this is kind of just a wow factor, that your school is very well displayed online. So you want to make sure it's user-friendly across devices. So if you don't already have a website that is easy to navigate on an iPhone, this is a must. Over 60% of parents are looking at your website through a phone. And have automations. If you don't have automated tour scheduling on your website, you are missing out on leads. I say this very simply because I think parents nowadays, they don't like making phone calls as much as they used to. This is what we talk about, always kind of revisiting your target audience, your avatar. I think a couple years ago, it was completely normal for parents to have to call up a school to set up a tour. Nowadays, people don't like doing that as much. So it's important to have those forms on your website so they can fill that out themselves. Once they meet you face to face on this tour, they become a little bit more comfortable with the idea of a phone call. But I think, you're missing out on those leads if they can't just schedule a tour with a couple of clicks on your website. You also want to make sure to have content and information that is strategic on your school website. And when I say strategic, I mean have someone that is not a Montessorian read over it. I say this a lot because I think that we become immune to our own language and our lingo. We know what grace and courtesy means. We know what practical life means. We know all of these things in our terminology, but somebody who's new to Montessori may not understand it. And so you want to make sure that everything is very readable for them and approachable, because something that we come across a lot when we're marketing Montessori is it's too much information or it's overwhelming for parents and they feel intimidated by it, or they feel like they're not adequate enough to come in and for a tour. So you want to make sure everything is strategic and easy to read through. So I recommend, if you have someone, if you know a friend or someone who doesn't know about Montessori, just ask them to read this and say, does this make sense? Is this too much information for you? Are you overwhelmed? Definitely be strategic with that. I also think just your overall design and your layout should be impressive. You should not have an outdated website. There shouldn't be anything blurry, any images that don't quite fit right. Different text fonts, all of this can, I think, take away from the visual experience of a website. I will say, if you ever need a reference, I recommend just checking Nido site. This is our fully functioning sample school website. You're free to take a look at this. You can see the different forms that we implement. You can see kind of get some ideas. I know some people on the call have a website built by us, but we've built several different school websites, and we find that there's a specific formula that just works very well. And the most important elements of that formula are on your homepage. I think your homepage, oh, here's one of our pop-ups. It should absolutely front and center have your ages. Who do you serve? Parents don't want to dig for that information. I've gone on many school websites where I feel like I don't actually know the ages unless I click through each individual program. They don't even have it listed here, and it takes forever. It's too difficult. You should always have the ages. You should have a clear call to action on your homepage. Ours is to schedule a tour. This is our number one thing, and the reason that scheduling a tour is our main CTA is because that's what sells Montessori, is the tour, is when people come into the classrooms and they see our environments and they know in that moment that nothing compares to what we're offering in Montessori. We have our mission statement, which again, I said is very core to who we are and what our community is about. We have a little summary of why Montessori in a way that's very condensed. It's just the main points. It's very approachable and it answers the basic questions. We have a couple of forms. The reason why we have these forms is to collect information so that we can have leads, we can track this. When our board is asking us how many people came in through our website, how many people are requesting information from us, how many new contacts do we have this year? You can present that information. We have our programs, testimonials. This is huge. I think in Montessori, you have to have testimonials on your website. So I recommend collecting some if you don't already have that and including them on your website. Social proof is crucial. Another call to action here, and then our blog. So this is usually our formula for a perfect homepage. And even if you don't have a website through us, I would say follow something close to this formula. Make sure your homepage has these elements. It's simple, it's effective, and it works the best in our experience. If you're looking to invest in digital advertising, I'll talk about what's actually worth it. And the first thing I will say is don't invest in digital marketing unless you have a great website. I've met with schools in the past where they're like, well, we're spending $5,000 on Google Ads a month and we're not really seeing a return. And then I look at their website and I'm like, well, you don't have any information about, how can I schedule a tour online automatically? You don't have a lot of information on your programs. You don't talk a lot about what Montessori is. You don't have a blog where I can learn more. So you're spending a lot of money on your ads to get people to your website, but then they can't do anything on your website. So I would say first, start with a website before you even consider running something like Google Ads, pay-per-click ads, Facebook ads. If you have the budget and your goal is to increase enrollment, I would opt for Google Ads. They're the most effective. They have the best targeting abilities, and Google has more data than anything else. They know everything about everybody, not to be scary, but they do. Facebook ads, Meta ads, so Instagram ads are great for promoting events, like if you have an open house, something like that you want to increase attendance, I would recommend that. And those are usually a little bit cheaper than Google ads. But it's something, that you can consider doing as well. I would also say this is not really investing in digital marketing because it's free. Just post on social media. Have someone on your team do it if you don't want to do it yourself. At our school community, we actually allocated a parent. We had a really good relationship with this parent. It worked out that, they were keen on social media. They loved doing social media and things like that. And so we would send them a bunch of images and then they would create the captions and post for us just for free because they thought it was fun. Not every community is going to have that, but that's an option. Look at your staff, look at classroom assistants, look at any office staff that might be social media savvy, and you just have to post maybe once or twice a week on Instagram, something like that consistently can really help you just build a presence online without having to pay for any type of paid advertising. I'm gonna check here in the chat if I have any questions. Here, Aaron says, we're with Nido CRM. We also use Snowman software, Day School for our enrollment history and reporting. They too can be a good match for Montessori schools. Small Montessori school, and I'd love to browse marketing plan templates to track approaches across the different channels. Any templates out there to share? I don't know about templates for tracking. I don't think we have anything like that on Montessori Thrive, which is our resource website, but I'll have to see what I can find. If anyone has anything to share, please do so. Lori shares here, we find for tours giving an option to request a date and then we call back to schedule because we're getting a lot of no-shows when they schedule themselves. That's another problem that I think happens when there is no face-to-face interaction. It's very easy to click online and be like, oh, I'm going to book a date and then forget about it and don't show up because you haven't called someone, you haven't spoken to someone. So that does happen sometimes. So that's a good solution. And then what you can also do is if you're using a CRM, you can automate to have like a text message sent to them 24 hours in advance or 48 hours in advance, reminding them to confirm for their tour or to reschedule for a later date if they can't make it. Something like that can also help because you don't want to waste your time waiting on a parent prepping for a tour and then them not showing up. Lisa says, I started using Sign Up Genius to schedule tours, much higher successes and families showing up, and I built it around my calendar. Another great option. And some people do still just use things like Google Calendar or Calendly to schedule tours. I think it is important, though, to remind families at least a 24-hour or 48-hour window, like, hey, by the way, you scheduled a tour with us on this day. Are you going to be coming or not? That way we can get everything ready for you. Or you can always just follow up with a phone call to confirm with them as well. I think doctors do that. They will phone you and be like, just making sure you're going to come to your appointment at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. That's another approach that you can do. All right, content marketing. And I think this is another area where Montessori can really invest in because as Montessorians, we have so much that is content worthy. We have beautiful imagery. We have environments that are to die for. The images that you see of Montessori environments, of classrooms, are playgrounds, the children working, it speaks for itself. And we also are constantly educating families and sharing our philosophy. So that really makes for great content marketing, meaning that you're just sharing images, you're sharing videos, you're sharing blogs and information about what your school does. I think that content is the most effective way to inform families consistently about the unique benefits of Montessori. I recommend doing things like publishing a blog. That should definitely be a goal if you haven't set that as a goal for your school year, is publishing a regular blog. And find a frequency that works for your community, that's realistic for your community. That might look like one blog a month. That might be one blog a week. It depends on your capacity. But I think that really doing that regularly is so effective. Firstly, from a digital marketing standpoint, it helps with SEO to keep your website refreshed. It helps with search engine optimization. It helps keep your website up to date. It also allows learning of Montessori to take place on your website. So when parents are learning about Montessori from you, you become more trustworthy. It builds value in their eyes. Maybe they want to share that link with another parent. Maybe it's being spread across social media. It's a way for your school to become more trusted and just kind of an authority on Montessori and what you're teaching. So I think that's beneficial. You can include it in your newsletters and you can recycle blogs. I tell this to schools as well. You know what? If you write a really good blog and 5 years go past and those families have aged out of your school, you can, update the pictures, maybe rework the content ever so slightly and republish it for the new families coming in. So once you create content, you can use it time and time again. Same with photography. I've met with schools that are like, oh yeah, we need to update the pictures on our website because those kids are now 15. I'm like, well, as a prospective parent, I don't know that. And the picture is so effective, it's moving and it tells me a story. So when you invest in good content, a good photographer, good blogs, you can use that year upon year. So, it's something to invest in, certainly. Something I always ask schools is, would you pick the school with great blogs and supporting parenting resources or the school with a very basic website? So if I, am between two schools and one has a blog where I'm learning about the what is practical life? Why are there different age groups in this Montessori classroom? What are the benefits of Montessori? And I'm learning it from this website. They might have a free printout about positive discipline that I can download from their website versus a school that just talks about their programs and asks me to schedule a tour. I feel a stronger connection with the one that has a lot of resources and information for me. So that's something I always like to tell schools to consider when it comes to their marketing. I always like to talk about email marketing because it's free. And I know schools are always coming to me and being like, how can we market our schools? We don't have the biggest marketing budget. And I say email marketing. Email marketing is one of the most effective ways to market in the Montessori space. And I think that unfortunately, so many Montessorians are afraid of email marketing because they're scared of coming across as pushy or annoying. And I think that in our society, people are so used to email marketing nowadays, they know how to unsubscribe. It's very easy to unsubscribe to email marketing. You scroll to the bottom of the email and you click, please unsubscribe, and it's done. You won't hear from us anymore. So I say continue to email, even if the parent chose to enroll in a different school, even if they, are older, they might send it to a friend who now has a child that's ready for primary. They might be having a bad experience at said other school that they chose, and they see that you're having an open house again, and they want to ask you more questions and see if maybe they want to transfer. All of these are real life examples too, by the way, of people that we've talked to that have actually had this happen. So I really recommend email marketing. The easiest way to email market is just to send your newsletter to your entire contact list. Everyone on your contact list, whether they're a prospective parent or whether they're a current parent, should just receive your news. I think it should on a monthly basis, at least one monthly newsletter, maybe not your weekly newsletter. And also to develop a couple of email nurtures. And what we mean by email nurtures is a sequence of emails that are automated when they fill out a form. So let's say I'm a parent that filled out a schedule a tour form. I have a system in place that automatically sends them emails, whether it's a CRM, whether it's something like MailChimp, and they will receive 6 emails over the span of a month, educating them on Montessori and the benefits and encouraging them to come in for a tour. Let's say that parent came in for a tour, they're now receiving a different nurture about submitting their enrollment form. Do they have any follow-up questions? Would they like to schedule a one-on-one phone call following the tour? All of these things can help you refine and perfect your admissions process. So I recommend email marketing because it's free. You can test out different nurtures. You can see what works well. You can track how many people open your emails if you're using software. How many people are clicking on your emails? Did they click on a link? Did they look at something? So all of these things are important. And I recommend to have a way to build your email list. Usually this is through your website and by having forms where people have to submit their email. Lori here asks, what would you suggest to include in a newsletter? Our current newsletter is more directed to current parents, but one for email marketing is a great idea. So you could have a email newsletter that's specifically for non-enrolled parents. And some schools do this. They send about once a month. And it's talking about, usually it's the blogs, a blog or two that was published. That's usually a great way to lead parents into it. Maybe you include a testimonial in there. And you can promote any sort of upcoming events that you might have ongoing, whether that's an open house, whether that's like a special group tour that you're offering. Maybe you're doing some type of parenting event that you're opening to the wider community, or for interested prospective parents, they can join too. It doesn't have to be enrolled families only. You can include that kind of information. So I recommend keeping it short and sweet. It doesn't have to be necessarily as lengthy as your parent community that's enrolled, because obviously they will be a little bit more interested, I think, in, what are the activities this month or something like that for the kids. Although you can include that as well in your monthly newsletter. Like if you're having some type of I don't know, a musician come to your classrooms and and do like a music session with the students. You can take pictures and you can say, we had a really successful session with our musician. The children love playing the instrument. So that's something that parents can see that they're missing out on, and maybe they want to inquire. Anyone have any ideas or thoughts on that? What they send out in their newsletters? I also recommend including a call to action. So just redirect people to your website. You know, whether that's like read the full blog or you know, register for open house or register for a parenting event, something like that can be effective. All right. Another thing I always tell schools is important is visual branding. And I think in the Montessori space, it is very important because we want our visual branding to reflect Montessori and to stand out from other institutions in our local area. So make sure that you have a logo that's recognizable, that's well designed, that speaks to your personality as a school, your mission, your vision. So, you know, if you feel that your logo is a little bit outdated, maybe it's a little bit too busy, I always tell schools as well, go with something simpler, because something that happens often is schools go for a very intricate design and then they want to get t-shirts made or something like that, and then it becomes very expensive. So, you know, taking a look at other logos out there, getting some ideas and figuring out what are the symbols that represent your school. Are you a nature-based school? Is your special thing a language that you're doing you know, Spanish and English immersion, something like that, and that can kind of help guide you to create an effective branding as well. And I recommend being consistent with your colors. In design, whether graphic design or web design, we use color codes. So every color that you see online will have a specific color code. It usually starts with a hash, like a hashtag, and an F usually, but it varies. Use that exact color code to do all of your branding, whether it's a logo, whether it's the school colors on your website, t-shirts, t-shirt designs. It just creates a lot more consistency with your branding. So I recommend doing that as well. Open houses and events. I think this is something that we also think about consistently throughout the year. How many open events are we having? Open houses are we having? I think when it comes to hosting and promoting these types of events, it's important to offer some sort of value or incentive. Maybe you can offer some type of application discount. Something that I actually, because as a marketer, I'm always kind of I'm listening to different strategies and tactics, and something I actually brought it up to my own team, but I was trying on wedding dresses and they said, oh, by the way, if you buy one of our dresses within 7 days, it's a 10% discount. That added pressure to the decision. I wasn't going to sit on it. I was like, that's a big discount for a dress that's hundreds of dollars. That can be a big saving if I just hurry up and make the choice. This is something, you know, it's good to be on the listen, always listening for strategies. Perhaps you can say, if you know you submit an application form within you know, the first week after attending an open house, we'll give you 10% off your first month of tuition or something like that. These are incentives that can help parents make a decision, that can help you fill those spots. So just always be, you know, on the lookout for strategies. You can also encourage families to spread the word. I know it was Elisa who talked a little bit about parent ambassadors, kind of planning things. I also recommend having parent ambassadors at your events, meaning current families that are thriving in your community to be there to answer questions of prospective parents, because nothing is more effective than hearing it from people who have experienced it. This is why usually when high school students go in for a college tour, who's leading the college tour? It's a student. And that makes the experience so much more believable and so much more, oh, that's going to be me. That could be me. So I recommend, you know, these kinds of approaches, making it very real, very transparent. also having staff members there and provide some type of snack or beverage or something to, I don't know, just allow a space for community building and discussion to take place. Lisa says here, we also use student ambassador programs on tours. That's great. I think, and again, I think that is such, it's like the in-person testimonials. I think it's so effective because a lot of times some parents are hesitant to sign up for Montessori because they know what the result is from a public school, because that's usually where their friends are having their children go, or they know what the result of that is, but they're not 100% sure what the result of a Montessori school is. So having those firsthand accounts there to answer questions is great. We have a school, had a school on a town hall once that they weren't able to necessarily have those parents there in person, but what they did instead is they put them on a call list. So they basically gave those phone numbers and said, is it okay if we have prospective parents call you from time to time if they have any questions about the program or the school? And the parents would agree, and those prospective parents can call up the parents and say, hey, I went for a tour. I wanted to ask, how was your experience? And you can also do it that way. So
We've had parents who say, when the student took me around and the student was able to explain the learning process or dynamic addition, whatever it might be, they said it sold me immediately. So,
yeah. And I think that speaks to our core philosophy of creating these individual, very independent, capable students. So yeah, nothing sells Montessori more than the product, I think. And that is children that are just extremely well realized. So I think it's a great approach.
Mila,
And yes, Wally?
I'm trying to understand how the student ambassador program works in the tour. Are we talking about like you get a student from a upper grade to come and be part of the tour, or how does it exactly work?
so for us, I've done it a couple different ways. I've had our oldest students, the 5, 6 students, come with me on tours and explain what's happening. I've also had, I've met with students in the beginning of the school year at their grade levels, 1st through 6th only, because kindergarten, it's a little much. And, when we get to that class on a tour, those students know to come over and greet the visitors. And then they talk about what's happening in the classroom or a particular material that's going on. So there's a lot of prep. There's a lot of how, they pretty much know how to conduct themselves, grace and courtesy. They've been doing it for years. So it's a couple different ways that we do it anyway.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I think that's great. And again, it's always great to find these creative ways to make your tours stand out. Your tour is certainly going to stand out if you have a student participating and leading the tour. That's something that's going to resonate with parents and stick with them. So I think that's great. Again, just to go over everything to make a successful tour is to have the automated tour scheduling, always doing a follow-up pre-tour, so a 24 to 48-hour reminder, and a post-tour follow-up as well, whether that's an email nurture or you just checking in with families. Providing resources on the tour as well. Something that we recommend is something like a checklist, or maybe either the person leading the tour or participating in it, there's a list of everything that needs to be discussed or covered. That kind of helps guide the tour a little bit as well. Information packets as well, or just recommending for people to read your school blog for more information. Something we also have in our own collection is the Montessori Answered one-pagers. You can find them on Thrive. And these are just PDFs that you can download and have ready in your office. And they basically answer every question, frequently asked question about Montessori. We're always adding more. So if there's one you don't see, you can always ask us to create it. But these are helpful too, because parents can take that home with them and they can always revisit it or keep it top of mind. So just having these resources ready, I think, builds a good impression. Lisa says, check your local community if you have the Scout Guide in your city. This is a great option we participated with for print advertising. Yeah. And I'm a bit advocate for old school marketing as well. I think print advertising is effective, going to community bulletin boards, yard signs sometimes even are really effective. Getting in local magazines or community magazines. I think this still works. So something to consider. Testimonials and referrals. Again, I really recommend having this on your website. I love the student and parent ambassador ideas that we've had and just encouraging good word of mouth in your community. If you have some type of referral program, that can also help if you're really looking to open, to fill up spots that are open. And inviting the general public to certain school events, like parenting courses, if you have some type of parenting course, just letting local parents come for free can be helpful. So I recommend doing that. If anyone has any other methods for gathering testimonials in their community, I recommend dropping those in the chat or unmuting yourself because we're always looking for niche. Yes. And getting on those kind of third-party websites is good. So asking parents to fill out a review there because it's not associated with your school. So it's almost like parents feel like, oh, well, these are people who genuinely feel this way. It's not like on the school website. So it's good to get those bases covered as well. Community management is another thing that you can kind of look to expand year upon year. Get in touch with your local community. Do you have a space you can offer local groups and clubs after hours? Maybe you can free up a classroom for a local mom group to meet once a month or something like that. That's a great way to get people through your door and build a good impression. Is there a school you can get in touch with for referrals? Let's say you end at primary, but you have a great school that you know for elementary and you can recommend parents to one another. Are there local businesses you can partner with or some type of sponsorship you can arrange? Connecting with other schools, parenting groups, local libraries. I know, a lot of local libraries, they have reading groups or things like that for children or special events. See if you can set up, a business card or a bulletin board there. You can speak to the library about that. And creating Facebook groups as well to connect with a wider community of parents or joining these Facebook groups and seeing what's going on in the community, in the parent community in my area. So I recommend doing things like that just to get out there. This is not going to apply to every school, but I think this is something that many schools strive to offer is some type of financial aid or assistance. So I recommend to see what's available in your state. It changes year upon year. Sometimes there's new programs available. You can also do fundraising for certain scholarships. Usually what a lot of schools are able to offer is some sort of sibling discount. And also doing a 3-year commitment discount. So if a child is able to stay for that kindergarten year, maybe they get a discount on the first month of that 3rd year or something like that, or they get priority enrollment. These are some strategies as well that have helped communities kind of keep the parents and their community mission aligned. And always be looking at competitors, always be looking at what other school communities are doing in a friendly way, of course. But just seeing, what messaging is on their marketing, what messaging is on their social media, how does their website compare? What are my strengths that I can really lean into that other schools don't have? And how can you continue to improve and stand out? Lisa asks, does anyone else use continuous enrollment contract, the evergreen contract? Does anyone else use this? No, so you all have kind of a re-enrollment period here. Oh, Erin, we do not use the evergreen contract. Okay.
We moved to a continuous enrollment contract for our elementary program a few years ago, and we're not chasing down people in August to find out what they're going to do, for September. And we're getting ready to shift it to our primary program as well.
That's good. I can't remember when it was, but we had a town hall a couple months ago, or maybe a year or so ago, where we talked about re-enrollment, everything about re-enrollment, whether it's continuous enrollment or you have, Usually the enrollment period is in the winter, like after the holidays. But that's interesting to hear that it's good to not have to chase people up. If anyone has anything else to share on that, please do so. And then just measuring success. I think something that, you set yourself up all of these goals at the beginning of the year and just constantly being, checking in, keeping track of things, evaluate areas of growth, what's working, what's not working. For instance, I love that Lisa talked about how effective her social events are. So if you notice that your social events aren't doing well or aren't well attended, asking yourself questions or sending out surveys to say, what can I do to improve attendance, or what can we do to get parents to show up? Celebrating achievements and setting new benchmarks year upon year, and of course, assessing areas for growth. Does your website need to be better? Should you be publishing more content, etc.? We always have these resources available to you. I also recommend if you need any of our town hall recordings, they're all on our YouTube channel. And our weekly town halls are always free to join, and we welcome anyone. We also have a private school leadership forum on Thrive and our resource collection where you can request resources. Julie here asks, what's the difference between continuous and re-enrollment? Lisa says pretty much the same. Returning families don't have to sign a new contract every year.
It's kind of
Right.
like your gym membership, and until you tell us that you're leaving, then the next year you find out what the tuition is. We give you 3 opportunities to opt out. If you don't opt out by the deadline, then you're automatically re-enrolled for the next year. Also, we give a tuition discount for every year that you're there. You get another percentage discount when you re-enroll. If you opt out because you're thinking about doing something else and want to come back, you're at the brand new tuition level. So there's incentives for re-enrollment. It's a game changer.
Certainly the feedback we've gotten from schools that do the continuous is that it's less work. Because again, parents have to opt out. So you're not handing out a bunch of paperwork to every parent year upon year. So yeah, it's good to hear that that's your experience with it. Julie says thank you. All right, we discussed all of these things already kind of throughout the call. I'll open it up to Q&A. I just wanted to share that if you haven't already seen it in our newsletter or on our social media, for our Montessori Thrive members, actually one of our town hall attendees suggested this, gave us inspiration for this, because we talked about staffing and the struggle of finding assistants. Because oftentimes Montessori schools do not hire Montessori trained classroom assistants. So we kind of have to, teach them a little bit or give them a foundation to Montessori. We're starting a Montessori assistant training course that we're hoping to do year upon year if this one goes well. We're going to have 3 sessions, and they're each an hour long. They're led by Montessori educators and consultants. And each one is a different topic, and they're just going to kind of serve as an introduction for your classroom assistants to learn a little bit about Montessori, their role as an assistant, learn a little bit about observation, positive discipline, and kind of the core Montessori principles so that they feel a little bit more empowered in the classroom, because I know that our lead guides do not always have the time or resources to be teaching assistants, especially since this is an area where there's a lot of turnover. So if you're a Thrive member school, you can register anyone in your staff for free. So any of your classroom assistants can join this course. These sessions will happen live. I believe they are Tuesday nights. It's September 17th, September 24th, and October 1st. If they cannot attend the live sessions, they will be recorded. So we can share those with your school and they can always reference the recording. But the live, obviously, they'll get to ask questions, and so it's a little bit more engaging to join the live. We also created a Montessori assistant guide PDF that kind of just breaks down the basics of Montessori. It has like a Montessori dictionary, talks about how to observe the child, a little bit of a positive discipline approach, because it's very different from a traditional school approach to discipline or a daycare approach to discipline. And it also talks about how Montessori is very much child-led. So if that's a resource that you want to download, it's all available. Lisa said, would this be good for other staff members who aren't teachers but should know what Montessori is about? Yes, absolutely. So let me go here in our collection. So all the information is here. And we talk a little bit about it here. So they can get registered for that. So the topics are positive discipline in the classroom, thriving as a Montessori classroom assistant, and observation basics, the role of an assistant in a classroom. But all of these are applicable. We will say this is not a replacement for a formal AMI or AMS assistant training by any means, but we're hoping it just provides a little bit of background and just is informative to those who are new to Montessori. I know at the Montessori school I worked at, I don't think any of our assistants were trained when they started with us. Maybe eventually after working a couple years, they did receive training. But it's just kind of a design to give those people a little bit of background so that they know this is how a Montessori, this is what's important in a Montessori classroom. So that's the aim. So we hope that we have plenty of people registered already for the first call, so we're excited for that. I'm happy to answer any questions about it. I will drop my email here in the chat if you want to ask any questions. All right. Erin, thank you. So great to see you as a sister. I hope that it's really helpful. I'm really excited about the speakers. Rupali is actually who's pictured here in the middle. She's one of our community members. She's a Thrive member, and she is an educator and an administrator at a school. She's really great. Kristen Anchor is a parenting and Montessori educator consultant. We absolutely love her. She's worked with us for different events. And Dolores is also a Thrive member, community member, and she is the head of Northwood Montessori School, just outside of Houston, Texas. So it's a great group, people who have trained assistants, who have led assistants, who have ran schools. So I'm excited about it. All right, I'll go ahead and stop sharing my
One
screen.
question, Camilla.
Mhm.
This training program that you have, the 3 sessions, is that still useful for people or assistants who have gone through the like AMS assistant training program?
It's certainly not going to be probably as extensive as that, but you can always send them the information on the landing page. You can send them the link there, and they can see if they want to sign up for it. Again, it's free, so they can always join and listen in. So completely up to you. But I would say, you know, if someone's already formally AMS or AMI trained, I'm sure, you know, they already have the basics ready. So I'm not sure how helpful it will be for that.
Okay.
All right. Next week, we're going to be talking about school expansion or moving. So this is for schools who have expanded and need a bigger space or are looking to expand or looking about that process. And it will be led by Rupali, who is a school leader. She recently underwent this process with her school where they relocated. So she's going to be sharing everything about that process, what it was like for her, answering your questions about it. Lisa asks, is it the same time? Yes. So all of our town halls are always from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. So they'll always be at the same time unless it's a holiday like Christmas holiday or Thanksgiving. So yeah. And it'll be the same registration link as well. You'll have to sign up for the Zoom call for the date that you want to attend. And again, it's always free. All right. If there are no other questions for now, we'll go ahead and wrap up. I know we're a little bit over today, but I think it's just because this is the first one of the year and you guys were bringing up some great ideas and solutions. So I appreciate that. Again, this recording will be available on YouTube later today, and we'll see you next week for a great conversation. Thank you for joining. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have a good year.